Hello everyone and welcome back to Midlands Climate Conversations, where we unpack real climate issues and the solutions shaping our future. I'm your host Wayne Musingwini, and joining us today is Dr. Jaison Chatsiwa, a climate scientist, educationalist, and the chairperson of Sustainable Environment and Climate Smart Agriculture. Today we'll be delving into what real climate resilience looks like on the ground, what is working, and what can change. Dr. Jaison, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you for the opportunity. Invite me to this show to clarify issues concerning climate change. Thank you.
That's great. So we understand that your work focuses on pro-poor climate adaptation. We would like to know, what does this actually look like on the ground for Zimbabwean household in the rural area?
Thank you, Wayne. The issue of pro-poor adaptation, it comes from the concept of climate change and its impact in rural areas. If you can see, quite a number of people believe that climate change is a myth, yet it's a reality which is actually affecting the people in rural areas. So they suffer from vulnerability, which is actually a function of adaptive capacity, exposure, and sensitivity because of climate change. So we are basically looking at what the rural farmers do have, the smallholder farmers do have in rural areas in order to fight against the impacts of climate change. So that's why we are here actually to explore more and see what these people can do and what the government can do in order to make sure that rural farmers, they've got more resilience and fight against the impacts of climate change.
That is great, and I love how we are looking into specifically the rural communities. Yes. So we understand that from your research, would like to understand which climate risks are currently hitting rural communities the hardest, and why are they so difficult to adapt to?
Thank you. Yeah, we have got quite a number of risks that the people in rural areas are facing, particularly these smallholder farmers. Currently they are suffering from critical shortage of water, which is actually drought. Taking into account that our farmers, they depend on rain-fed agriculture. So that critical shortage actually is crippling harvesting for these farmers. And also we've got heat waves, which is currently taking place. Shortage of rainfall across the country is another risk that these people are actually facing. Temperatures, let alone, they are rising to such an extent that their crops are not reaching what they expect, and also they suffer from that. So they are suffering from these climate issues.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And I'm sure these are things that we are all experiencing within Zimbabwe. These are not far-fetched issues at all. So we know that people are coming up with a number of solutions and strategies to deal with these impacts, but many of these adaptation strategies exist on paper. What separates what truly works in rural Zimbabwe in particular from those that fail?
Thank you. Yeah. Normally, the government is trying its best actually to cushion our farmers in rural areas, particularly the smallholder farmers. But some of their efforts are not reaching the intended targets. You see, for a rural farmer, right, for a smallholder farmer, we look at what are known as assets. What do they have? That's why I talk about pro-poor assets. What are they doing? What do they have? So normally we've got a pentagon of assets: human assets, physical assets, social assets, financial assets, and also some physical assets. So you'd find that some farmers in rural areas, they don't have all of these. So they suffer from some of these. And if they don't have any one of these, it means they are going to suffer the impacts of climate change. So what is actually working currently for quite a number of smallholder farmers in rural areas, such as Gutu there in Masvingo, Bohera there in Manicaland, you'd find that they actually don't have enough assets to carry on with their agricultural activities in order to fight the hunger that they are facing and also achieve food security in Zimbabwe. So we have a problem there. So actually what is working is actually those strategies that they should have, strategies like going for early maturing varieties, and also irrigation, and also conservative agriculture, and smart agriculture. People should not work very hard, but they should work smartly in order to achieve quite a lot from their fields.
And I'm sure there's so many testimonies as to these things actually working within these communities. Yes. So we can also look at, I'd like to believe that in our Zimbabwean communities in particular, there's indigenous knowledge that already exists of how people used to deal with this. So how can we combine indigenous knowledge systems as well as scientific innovation that we can integrate these to build stronger and locally relevant climate solutions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the thing is, indigenous knowledge system is what our ancestors have been using for quite some time in order to achieve and harvest greater harvests. So indigenous knowledge is what most of the farmers are currently using, but the government has tried to come in order to complement the indigenous knowledge systems in order to cushion the farmers. So I find that the unfortunate thing with our IQS, indigenous knowledge system, is that most of the knowledge is not documented. And also there is a gap that has been created between the current generation and the previous generation, or the current generation and the future generation. No one is collecting the information to put it in a storage which can be shared downwards to the next generation. The government as well has tried so many things in order to make sure that they complement the fusion between indigenous knowledge and what is normally known as the Western knowledge, or what is normally known as the modern knowledge. For example, the use of drones in agriculture, the use of computerized irrigation, for example. And if we combine the two, it will benefit the smallholder farmer in rural areas. The greatest challenge is that the rural farmer who is out there in the periphery, they lack the information from the government, from the Western knowledge, is this, what they can actually take in. We don't have enough centers to disseminate information to our smallholder farmers. That's the challenge. But the issue of combining an integrated approach between indigenous and Western or modern knowledge about agriculture would be the best way to go.
So we understand that now our smallholder farmers need information. Access to information needs to reach even the last mile communities for them to be able to actually adapt adequately. So we know that Zimbabwe has a number of policies, and thankfully also now have climate policies that are existing. To what extent are these current climate policies genuinely reaching and benefiting the poorest communities?
Thank you. Zimbabwe ratified the United Nations Framework of Climate Change some years back, and also it has unleashed a number of policies in order to assist the rural farmer who is at the back of the beyond. So there are quite a number of policies, right, that were actually unveiled by the government of Zimbabwe in order to assist the farmers in order to achieve food security. Like you find that we've got the National Climate Policy, right? The National Climate Policy of Zimbabwe, assisting every corner of Zimbabwe, smart agriculture again, and also they went beyond and talk about the Pumbuza, you see, where they try to make sure that they use conservative agricultural methods in order to make sure that the farmers, they harvest more. And also that we have got the national documented climate programs which are unleashed to our farmers in order to make sure that the farmer who is at the back of the beyond in rural areas, they harvest more, trying to fight and produce more in order to feed the nation.
So at least we now know that Zimbabwe is definitely doing something to enhance climate resilience within even the poorest communities that are out there. So from everything we discussed, the strategies, the policies that are in existence, what are the biggest barriers that prevent pro-poor adaptation strategies from scaling up? They could be financial or institutional or social, but what are these barriers?
The barriers are quite many facing these people in rural areas concerning achievement of food security and their resilience. Number one, funding is actually a challenge in rural areas. Sometimes we find that the government may not have enough funds actually to assist the rural farmer. Like what I said, we normally depend on the Pentagon or the pro-poor assets, but finance is one of the most important assets that the rural farmer should have in order to achieve what they really want. So it's a challenge on its own. Concerning the human aspect, you'd find that currently we've got a lot of movement from rural areas to urban areas, urbanization in particular. It's draining the labor force from the rural areas to urban areas, leaving the old people in rural areas actually to take care of themselves and to do the work. And the physical aspects, very few people actually have got quite some assets to use, things like tractors, things like walls, things like machinery to use. And of course, we talk about appropriate technology to assist these farmers. And don't forget that concerning the financial aspect, the rural farmers sometimes lack what collateral security in order to borrow money from the government. But again, we say the government has tried through Command Agriculture, trying to assist those farmers again who may lack some inputs in order to achieve what they really want in terms of food security. And also the information, we have seen quite a number of stations which are disseminating information to our rural farmers, the outreach programs which are being done. For example, this one, the Sustainable Environment, Climate Smart Agriculture. We are trying as much as we can in order to educate our rural farmers what they should do, and also to make sure that they are prepared to fight the impacts of the impacts of climate change. Because when you look at the Notre Dame, the Global Initiative Index of Adaptation, you'd find that the government is doing a lot in order to uplift the standard of living of people in rural areas to achieve what the best they can do in the face of this climate change.
So it's good to know that amidst the barriers, a lot of work is being done, not to leave them behind. So Dr. Chatsiwa, now would like to zone in on what you think you can do in your own capacity. If you have the attention of policymakers for 1 minute, what urgent changes would you push for to strengthen climate resilience in rural Zimbabwe?
Yes, given that opportunity, definitely what I would want to see and do is to re-engage the indigenous knowledge and the modern knowledge to the farmers. What I know is the information is not reaching the intended farmers in rural areas. So it means the government, through their extension services, they should make sure that every district has got for example, the weather station, so much that they can actually forecast and predict what is in their future and convince the farmers that climate has changed. It's no longer a myth, it's a reality in Zimbabwe. Even if you look at the index of vulnerability in Zimbabwe, it's currently 0.55. You see, which means it's a high level. Therefore, there is a missing link between the farmers in the rural areas and the government, or those people who are supposed to give them the information, like the agricultural extension workers and the climate scientists. We need weather stations in various provinces, working weather stations, be it computerized or the traditional ones. This will go a long way to educate our rural farmers in order to know what should be grown, what should rear in terms of livestock, and what should be done, how can they diversify, what more strategies are needed. So it's us, the scientists, who should actually go out there and educate the people to complement the government efforts.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jaison Chatsiwa. That was some powerful knowledge indeed, and those were some amazing insights onto how Zimbabwean communities, in particular rural communities, can actually adapt and learn to live with this new monster we call climate change. And to our valued listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Midlands Climate Conversations. Until next time.
Thank you.